I was going to school and working at the same time. I was studying combustion engineering and working for the Norfolk and Western Railroad, and I had an opportunity. Of course, I was in school. I had participated in all of the one-act plays, and it was about all we had then, and recitations and speeches and etc. And at Lafayette, where I went to school, Mr. Jim Graham, who was the professor there, said after the commencement of the school, the commencement exercises, I had participated in 2 or 3 things, and one recitation that I did was "Farewell, Brother Watkins I." And he told my mother, he said, I'm sure that Henry is destined for something beyond what we expect or hope, but I think that he has there's something there that's urging him to go in the direction towards the theater. Well, of course, my people were not, they were theater-minded, as going to the theater for amusement, but for participating in it, they were very definitely against it. And then I had an opportunity to go with a stock company. A stock company in those days, a repertoire stock company. It's up in a repertoire of maybe 10, 12, 15 plays, all those actors that have been doing this all their lives. And I move into this, and I could dance, and I could sing a little, and between each act of the play, there was a specialty, so that the show never stopped. An act of a dramatic play, the curtain went down, and then immediately came up behind an oleo drop, and on someone came, either sang a song, did a dance, or a monologue, or something of that kind, or a one-act skit, and then the scenery was changed, and up you go again. Well, I must have played everything from Uncle Tom on. They don't know what Uncle Tom is. That's before your time. Uncle Tom was a very famous play called Uncle Tom's Cabin. It's merely, in your minds, it's a part of a historical stepping stone that was way back there that was stepped on many times. And, well, I managed to get along by giving me a part to play. We'll say on a Monday, give it to you to play on a Tuesday. And I remember so well on the road and sitting up till 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't stay awake. And in those days you had a bowl and pitcher in your hotel room and not running water. And I have gone over and cracked the ice on the pitcher, on the water many times, and bathed my face to keep my eyes open so that I would be ready for rehearsal at 9 o'clock in the morning and to play that night. And many experiences like that, which was, I think, good for you. It's hard, maybe seem hard, but I didn't mind it. And the thing that interested me most, I sort of rather loved it. You didn't get any money. Didn't pay any salaries. I mean, they promised you salary, promised you something, but very seldom that you would receive it. But there was something about it that you loved doing this for the sake of doing it. And this went on for quite a number of years, about 4 years, I believe. Of course, I went from one thing to another. The first thing I had to do, of course, I was raised on a farm. I forgot to tell you that. I was born on a farm in Virginia, so I was accustomed to handling horses and all like that. And one of the first questions they asked me if I could ride. And I said yes. I ride bareback. I never had a saddle. I could ride bareback. So they had purchased horses that were used in the picture, and they said, pick out your horse. Well, I picked a horse out of this, and I didn't know I was picking out a bucking horse. And I sort of made a pet of him, and of course he was like all range horses. You can't feed him candy or sugar, but I would get apples and things that way given. and I sort of made a pet of him. Well, he saved my life on a couple of times, and I spent most of my idle time trying to ride like a cowboy. There was an Indian cowboy that was there, and I associated with him a great deal, and he taught me things about riding, and he would ride for me, and I would imitate him. And I succeeded far enough that I could ride this horse, and you could put a hat on the ground here, a kerchief over there, and a revolver over there, 40, 50 feet apart. And I could run and gallop, could ride down, reach down, and pick this one up that way, and pick the other way, and pick all three of them at once. Sometimes I'd miss one, but so would the good riders. And I would do things that, and I practiced roping, and I could rope fairly well. I wanted to do all the things you had to do to be a cowboy, because we made 3 or 4 cowboy pictures. But the thing that bothered me most was the fact that I had been all my life working for a living. I couldn't stand the idleness. You'd be called to the studio at 8 o'clock in the morning. You'd work maybe for an hour and a half, then you wouldn't work again till 3 in the afternoon. So with that time, I had to find some way to fill in that time. I had a desk put in my dressing room, and I started writing. I had in repertoire and in different shows that I had played in, I had many, many plots in my mind. So I could sit down and write by taking a little from this show and a little from that one. I could put together a reasonably good motion picture that would only run 2 reels, you see. And I'd give these away. And I think they made a couple of them, make all of them. Then over at Balboa, I had an original idea, and I wrote it. It was called Nemesis. They changed the title when they released it, called The Brand of Man. And that was I played, directed, and acted in that. And it was reasonably successful. They paid me $75 for that. That's the only story I was ever paid for. In this company, this was a little company, and this was the first picture made by Inspiration Pictures. We organized this in New York. A lot of detail. I'm full of details. I won't go into all these details of the organization because that is bother you. I was the director, I was the producer, I was the head of the scenario department, and then I was sort of general manager. So I didn't, and the president was a lawyer. We had one a company manager that had some motion picture experience, and then I had an assistant that I had in California one time. Boy, it was in New York. So when you say about authority, or you go, I could go most any way I wanted to go. All I wanted to go was in the direction in which I would get a good picture. In Tolliver David, Edmund Goulding, who later became a director, he had written a screenplay. In the meantime, I came in contact with Ernest Torrance, and immediately I was impressed. And he had never been in a picture before. He's a musical comedy, singing and dancing comedian, that big man, and a concert pianist. So he's very much talented in that line. And this is quite to get this far away. Well, anyway, I saw him. I was much more impressed then because I wanted to put him in this. So I got those 3 characters, those 3 tall men together. And I rehearsed the picture in New York for, we'll say, for a week before I went on location down in Virginia. This was down a little town called Crab Bottom, Virginia. And in trying to explain to Torrance the type of a bad man he was, I didn't want an old meanie, these people that are just mean at everything. I wanted him to have some fun out of life. And I said, your thought of fun, that while all this is going on and you're struggling about food and all that, and you've been on the lam from the police all this way through, you look and you see this cat asleep in the sun, And you think how funny it would be. You don't want to hurt the cat at all, but how funny it would be to drop that stone on the cat and see the cat sort of squash, sort of word out. I said, that's his matter of fun. Now, there's a scene that preceded this, that of where the sheriff ran them to the county line, and the sheriff wouldn't cross the county line. And he took his gun and was going to shoot the sheriff, and the father knocked the gun out of his hand, and he says, "Oh, Paul, I didn't want to hurt him. I just wanted to see the fun of seeing him fall off the horse." Well, I mean, getting that type of a character, that was my own idea of that type of a character rather than just having a meanie. None of this was in the screenplay. None of this was in the screenplay that you see in, like, the cat and the shot of the where he was going to shoot him to see him for the fun of seeing him fall. Now, when we got to this scene on location, I only rehearsed this to get over to Torrance the type of character that he was playing. And when we got around to this scene, he came to me, and said, "Mr. King," he says, "where's the cat?" I said, "The cat? What do you know? What cat? Why, don't you remember this is where I was to catch the stone?" I said to the property man, I said, "Get me a cat." All right, we put the cat in the scene. That's how the scene gets in the picture. There are many things of this kind that a director must improvise a great deal. And there's a great deal of improvising, the same as there is in music or anything else. That just has to be done. That is, as far as I'm concerned. I'm only speaking for myself now. I'm not speaking for someone else. Now, being able to dramatize as you go, and directing is a job of dramatization. And this thing of writing a story, we'll say that a play is produced, a book is published, and they go through a transition of putting it onto paper and put it into a screenplay. Now it must go through a complete another transformation completely, and that is from paper to film. That is, in my estimation, you have to have something to put from. You have to have something on the paper. I'm not discounting that in the slightest, but the manner in which it is done and how you do it is up to the director. Harry Cohen got very mad because I wouldn't do Tolerable David. I told him frankly. I said, here I did everything. I put everything that I had in Tolerable David the first time around. Now all I can do is try to go and redo what I did before, and I don't know if I could reach or get the natural ingredients that I want that I had then, because we were down in the mountains of Virginia where things, you took them as they were. They were right. You couldn't build or paint or do anything that was there really. I mean, that Hatburn house was a classic. I mean, where the old man lived, where they came to visit him. You take the house where the Kinnemans lived, was the house that Joe Hergesheimer lived in when he wrote the story, wrote the book. And I mean, and I knew I couldn't find all of those things again. And they'd want to make it in California, and California doesn't have those things. And I didn't want to try to redo the things I had done once before.